Der Smaragdsee. Wunderschön. Smaragd ist emerald auf Englisch. Emerald Lake. Absolutely beautiful. Aber warum ist es der See und nicht die See? Well, there's an interesting curiosity in the German language where sometimes the same word with the same spelling and the same pronunciation can take a different meaning depending on which grammatical gender you use with it. This is horribly confusing for students of the language because grammatical gender is already hard enough to learn as it is, especially coming from a language like English where we don't really have this. For example, der See means the lake. Die See, same spelling, same pronunciation, means the sea in the sense of like the ocean. In fact, the English word sea comes from the German word See, but it comes from die See and not from der See. Oh boy, this is confusing, but hold on because it gets worse. This is not an isolated case in the German language. There are many such words, and with these words, if you pick the wrong grammatical gender, you may end up saying something that is grammatically and syntactically correct, but which does not mean what you intended to say. That's bad. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some of these words in the German language and see if we can find a way to reduce the confusion a little bit. Das hier ist Lernen und Fahren. So for this episode, I'm going to sort these words into 3 general categories. Number 1, imported foreign loanwords. Number 2, words that have regional differences within Germany or within German-speaking countries. And number 3, horribly confusing words that make no sense whatsoever and just make you want to pull your hair out. Let's start with the easy category. Foreign loanwords. When a word is imported into German from some other language, let's say English or French, sometimes the Germans can't agree on what grammatical gender that word should have. For example, the word Bitcoin has been imported into German, but is it die Bitcoin, feminine, or der Bitcoin? Turns out it's kind of both, because the Germans can't agree on that. Similarly, the word deepfake has been imported into German, but is it der Deepfake or das Deepfake? Well, depends who you talk to. Now, most of the time, when a word is imported into German and there's some question about what grammatical gender it should have, the Germans seem to pick either der or das. Not always. There are some exceptions where they can't decide between die and das, or die and der, or die or das or der, but most of the time it's going to be either der or das. For example, reboot. Is that der reboot or das reboot? Well, it's either, because the Germans themselves can't decide. So if you come across a word that has obviously been imported into German from some other language, you can usually just guess either der or das, and chances are pretty good you'll get it. So I'm not too worried about this category. This one's not that difficult. Now let's move on to the let's move on to the second category, because this is where things get a little bit interesting. Sometimes even with German words, forget about foreign imported words, let's just look at words that exist in the German language. Sometimes Germans can't decide, even amongst themselves, what grammatical gender these words should have. For example, Drittel, it means third. In Germany, this is der Drittel, the third. But in Switzerland, it's das Drittel. Why? I don't know. Well, how about Keks? It means cookie. Is that der Keks or das Keks? Well, it depends where you are. In the northern part of Germany, it's der Keks. But in some parts of the southern part of Germany, it's das Keks. Then there are words that have historical weirdness to them. For example, the word Geisel, it means hostage. Historically, this was der Geisel, but over time, for some reason, it changed, and now today in German, it's die Geisel. But if you're reading old German text, you will sometimes see der Geisel, and it was correct at the time. And then there are words that are really bizarre, like the word jungle. The English word jungle, very obviously, is related to the German word jungle. But is it der Jungle, or die Jungle, or das Jungle? Well, that's a trick question and a half, because it's all three, at least historically. In modern German, they kind of settled on der Jungle. Why? I don't know, they just picked one. They just eventually said, guys, this is dumb. Let's stop arguing about this. Let's just say that it's der Jungle. So in modern German, der Jungle, great, but again, if you're reading historical text, you'll sometimes see die or even das with that word. Now at this point, you might be a little bit frustrated because if the Germans can't agree on stuff like this, fundamental concepts in their own language, how is a student of the language supposed to get any of this? Holy cow, it is beautiful out here. Look at this view. Man, I gotta come here more often. You know what? I'm gonna pull over. I'm gonna pull over because it's beautiful. And I'm gonna take a picture. To be continued. And we are back. So let's move on to the worst of the three categories. The words in this category are evil. They're evil in the sense that these are very difficult. The words in this category legitimately have more than one grammatical gender. In fact, you could almost think of them as being multiple words that happen to have the same spelling and same pronunciation, but different meanings depending on context, or in this case, depending on gender. We've already seen der See versus die See. Those are both bodies of water, so they're at least kind of in the right neighborhood. If I referred to Emerald Lake back there as die Smaragdsee, that's wrong, but it's kind of obvious what I meant. But let's look at some that might not be obvious. Let's start with lighter. What does lighter mean? Well, it kind of depends. If you say die Leiter, that refers to the ladder, and you can kind of see the relationship between the English word ladder and the German word Leiter. At least phonetically, they're kind of similar. But if you say der Leiter, it does not mean ladder, but rather leader. And again, you can see phonetically there's a relationship between the English word leader and the German word Leiter. In fact, they're kind of closer than ladder and Leiter. Or how about Steuer? What does Steuer mean? Well, die Steuer refers to the tax. But das Steuer refers to the steering wheel, like the helm of a ship, the steering wheel on a big ship at sea. So when you say der Steuermann, it looks like, because die Steuer is the tax, you're kind of expecting that to mean taxman, like a tax collector, right? But no, Steuermann is the guy on a ship who steers the big steering wheel. The helmsman, you might say in English. If you want to say taxman in the sense of like a tax collector, that would be Steuereintreiber in German. That kind of means like tax bringer-inner. Or how about Schild? What does Schild mean? Well, der Schild, you can kind of see an English word hiding in there. It's shield. Like the old, on the battlefield, you'd carry a shield in one hand and a sword or an axe in the other hand. Der Schild means the shield, great, but das Schild refers to a sign, like a road sign, a street sign. Same word, same spelling, same pronunciation. The only thing we're changing here is the grammatical gender. What is going on with my mirror? This thing... Oh my god, no, I'm gonna have to clamp that down. I didn't bring tools with me. I don't have a pair of pliers or a wrench. Okay, let's talk about one that has always bugged me, and that is Teil. In German we have der Teil, but we also have das Teil. They're not the same thing. They both kind of translate to English as the parts, but they mean different things, because in English we use that word to mean different things. For example, you could have a specific part on a machine or a motorcycle, like this mirror that seems to be malfunctioning today. It could be referred to as das Teil. Das Teil, a specific part, something you can hold in your hand, is das Teil. Der Teil also means part, but it's more generic. It's something that you can't hold in your hand. It's sort of like portion, or part meaning like section. Like this part of the country is very beautiful. You wouldn't say dieses Teil. You would say dieser Teil. This part, masculine, of the country is very beautiful, because this is not a specific part in the sense of like a machine part, something you can hold in your hands, but rather like a section or a portion or a quadrant, or I don't know, something more generic than that. That one always gets me, because I can never remember that difference between das Teil and der Teil. So I usually just pick one, and even though I've got a 50-50 chance of getting it right, somehow I'm wrong more often than not, and that just doesn't make sense. So what's the trick here? What's the life hack that we can use to remember this and keep these words apart in our minds so that we can remember when to use which gender with which word? Well, unfortunately, there kind of isn't one. This is one of the things that you just sort of have to memorize, which is the least fun part of language learning. So, unfortunately, I don't really have a good answer to that one. But I will point out that the list of words that we've covered in this episode is not exhaustive. I'm going to put up a bigger list on the screen. And even this list is probably not exhaustive. There's a bunch of these in the German language that, unfortunately, you just kind of have to memorize. And I know that's not a lot of fun, but at least in theory, you get the hang of it over time. So, that'll do it for this episode of Lernen und Fahren. And we'll see you on the next ride.